This is Block 8, Pax Americana, Section 4, We Like Ike, with the section Consumerism. When you looked at your World War II DBQ documents, there was a lot in there about dangerous dollars and inflation, and when there was too many dollars and not enough stuff to buy. And that was the fact of the 1940s, that the 1940s was a time of full employment because of the war. Everyone was getting paid, but since the factories were producing war goods, there was not a lot of stuff for people to actually go and buy. That changed in the 1950s. People are sitting on a whole lot of money. They saved their money through the 1940s, and all of a sudden in the 1950s, with good jobs, bright future, a pile of savings, and American factories running full tilt to produce consumer goods, a explosion of consumer spending drove the American economy forward. It created a huge expansion of the American middle class. There was more people in the middle class. The American middle class was wealthier than it had ever been before. And because of that, a consumer culture unlike anything that had ever been seen in the 1920s began to grow up. And you start to see this consumer culture in so many different ways. The first credit card is come up with in 1949, Diners Club. You could, swipe the credit card and pay for it at the end of the month. You don't even need the cash to support the kind of buying that you want to do. Ray Kroc took over a struggling fast food joint from the McDonald's brothers and turned it into a global empire. Disneyland opened in 1955. People were buying the cars in the 1950s got bigger, and they are covered with chrome with more powerful engine. They're sold by attractive women, laying all over them and advertising. And people aren't just buying one car, they're buying two cars. There's a family car and, dad's little sports car that he zips around in, when he leaves the wife and children back at home. People are buying appliances, modern appliances, and it starts to create air conditioning, just more and more and more stuff that makes modern life comfortable and convenient. Suburban living created what became known as a keeping up with the Joneses mentality. That encouraged Americans to have the same stuff as their neighbors. That, if you're living in this, little suburban Levittown community, and, your neighbor, Mr. Jones, all of a sudden he has, a new car, or Mrs. Jones has a new washing machine, there's a sense created through advertising and through just normal human jealousy that if Mr. Jones has a new air conditioner, gosh darn it, I ought to have a new air conditioner. And if Mrs. Jones has a new washing machine, well then my wife ought to have a new washing machine. And if Mr. Jones has a new Ford, then I really should trade in my old Ford and get a new one. This attitude of keeping up with the Joneses is encouraged by manufacturers, it's encouraged by retailers, it's encouraged by advertising. And American consumer culture not only expands within the United States, but starts to expand all over the world. That, Coca-Cola starts selling Coca-Cola on all 6 inhabited continents. And Disney, puts out Disney movies not just in the United States, but all over Europe and Asia. That American consumer culture begins to overtake the entire world, where it still lives today. And this was a fact of the 1950s. Nothing portrayed consumer culture and the greatest change in American culture because of it like the rise and the popularization of television. Television had been invented in the late 1920s, but it did not become popular until after the war. That the technology was not advanced enough until after the war to make it accessible to all Americans. But once it was accessible to all Americans, television ownership just exploded. In 1950s, barely 5% of Americans had a television, but by 1960, 85% did. And you can tell by the graph just how quickly Americans bought televisions. No new technology had ever pervaded American homes so quickly and to the degree that television did. And the same sort of stuff that's on TV now in general was on TV then. news, sports, variety, dramas, soap operas, quiz shows, game shows, sitcoms. And people would rush home from school, people would rush home from work and plop themselves down in front of the television. Usually 3 or 4 channels that you got up to change, and you had to kind of fiddle with those rabbit ears sometimes. But it creates this mass culture. And it completely changed the American cultural landscape. Advertising could get in. Advertisers got in front of millions of eyeballs at the same time. That the news was portrayed by the 3 major broadcast companies: CBS, ABC, NBC, and those were pretty much the only stations. What CBS, NBC, and ABC said on the news, well, that became the news. That was it. If Walter Cronkite came onto your television in 1957 and read the news, that was the news. You couldn't log on to a blog or onto CNN or onto Deadspin or Drudge and kind of get a different opinion on the news. What NBC and CBS and ABC said was the news was the news. And what Coca-Cola put on its advertising on ABC, NBC, and CBS, that was advertising. And people just ate it up. And why wouldn't they? If you have the choice between having to use your imagination, run around outside, or have your entertainment spoon-fed to you, a lot of people are going to choose to have it spoon-fed to you. Cultural critics obviously did not like this. Cultural critics don't like anything. They said that television shows were bland. They said they were dull. They said that they catered to the lowest common denominator. They obviously had not yet seen the Kardashians. They're worried about, the standards in the United States going down, social standards, standards of beauty, aesthetics, moral standards, political standards, educational standards, as more and more kids just sat down, open-mouthed, in front of the television watching, shows that were not exactly designed to stimulate the greatest degree of intellectual activity in the history of the world. But whether you liked TV or not, it was a fact that was there to stay, and it changed the American cultural landscape in so many ways, in advertising, in mass culture, in consumption of news, in so many different ways. Television changed American culture.